What's up, guys? I'm EJ, and I'm here with Kendall. We're doing our next NBA draft comparison video. Obviously, as you guys can tell, with the coronavirus pandemic, we are separated. We were unable to do this video together, but we found a way to record remotely. So, Kendall, first of all, how excited are you about this new capability that we have?
Yeah, it's very exciting. Obviously, we kind of had a lull of videos recently in terms of our draft comparison series, but now we'll be back and we'll be having more and more over the next couple weeks and months. So I'm excited.
So let's get right to it, man. So again, this is another one of our draft comparison videos. Obviously, you've seen the other ones we've done. Not only going over the American players, some of the top international players here. Keeping it back within the states, though we do have a couple of guys who while they are American, they may have ancestry from places all over the country. I'm gonna start off with one guy who was named the National Player of the Year in college basketball this year. I think a lot of people were disappointed that we didn't get to see him play in the NCAA tournament. How about Obi Toppin, power forward from Dayton? What's your comparison for him?
Yeah, Obi Toppin's a interesting player. We're talking about a guy obviously kind of had a Ja Morant-like rise from his freshman year as being a on-the-radar potential NBA draft guy, but certainly not a lock first-round pick, to exploding at the My Invitational, to now being a consensus top 5-10 pick. And for me, the thing you see with Obi Toppin is his athleticism, his power, and his explosiveness. And for me, I think the guy that he reminds me of, especially another college superstar back in the day, is Kenyon Martin. Kenyon Martin, obviously, people forget. Obviously, he had his years in Denver with Melo where he was really good. But he was the number 1 pick in the draft when he went to New Jersey. And, a guy had a leg injury, obviously, at the end of his career at Cincinnati. But, playing with Jason Kidd was one of the most explosive power forwards in the modern NBA that we've seen, and excellent shot blocker, which I think Toppin has the potential to be a great shot blocker. Martin may be a little stronger than Toppin, but Toppin still has years to fill out where I think he could get stronger. And I think Toppin has a little bit of the back to the basket game that Martin has. And Martin maybe not as much of a shooter as Toppin. Toppin has probably a little more stretch potential, but Kenyon Martin had a little bit had some skills to him as well. So I think Kenyon Martin's an apt comparison for Obi Toppin.
Yeah, Kenyon Martin's an interesting player. I think that definitely the idea, older players, guys who played a long time in college, definitely ferocious finishers around the paint. That's not a bad one. For me, I went with Josh Smith. Now, I think for some people, I went with Josh Smith also with a more consistent jump shot. So I'm telling people to kind of not think about necessarily the Josh Smith that was, a rookie or early young player playing small forward, playing more on the perimeter. He really was miscast early in his career with the Atlanta Hawks. When the Hawks told him to kind of bulk up, play the 4, and play a lot more around the basket, I think he really thrived. And I think that had Josh Smith played in today's NBA, he'd play a lot more like Obi Toppin. Both guys, elite level athletes, powerful finishers off 1 and 2 feet, adept at finishing through contact. They run the floor exceptionally well. I mean, Josh Smith was just a gazelle going up and down the court. When I watch Toppin, he's very similar in that when he gets out and running, like he just runs past opposing 4 men, and even sometimes when he's playing small ball 5. Also, one thing underrated, both guys very underrated passers. I thought Toppin showed a great ability to pass out of double teams, find open men. Josh Smith was a really underrated passer. He was a guy that can get you 4 or 5 assists, per game when he was in his prime. And Toppin, similar to Kmart, what you talked about with Josh Smith, I think he has much more consistency as a jump shooter. I think he'll be a much better shooter. I think the only difference, and you probably say the same thing with Kmart, is I don't think that Toppin's going to be the defender that Kmart or Josh Smith were, especially Josh Smith, who is just like a jack of all trades, guard 2 or 3 positions kind of guy. Toppin's not really that kind of defender.
That's
he
where
can block some shots, though, and he's shown an ability to challenge at the rim, which is obviously Josh Smith was just a massive shot blocker. But I think that, especially the offensive game and the ability to finish and run the floor, I think that Josh Smith is a very apt comparison for Toppin.
Yeah, that's where the Amari Stoudemire comparisons come into play, with Amari not being a great defensive player and Obi Toppin also that being his weakness. Personally, I think Amari is a little lofty for Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin, I think, is a very good player, but I mean, Amari Stoudemire could go down as a Hall of Famer. So, I mean, that's definitely a lofty comparison, I think, for Obi Toppin. But Kenyon Martin, Josh Smith, two guys maybe just short of, I would say just short. They were short of the Hall of Fame, but still had very, very successful, lucrative careers.
I mean, we'll get into more later probably how our projections of these guys. I think Obi Toppin could be a star in the league. I'm very, very high on him. I think that, again, in today's NBA, where guys who can play multiple positions, who can stretch the floor and attack the rim, as a big man, I just feel like that those skill sets are so high valued now. And his ability to be in pick and roll, he gets on the right team, I think he's going to be a difference maker. Let's go with another big man. How about Onyeka Okongwu from USC? Another freshman. He played at Chino Hills with Lonzo Ball and LaMelo Ball, and he was part of that kind of crew. And he kind of went undervalued and kind of unheralded. Even though he did find his way to USC, and he had a spectacular year at with the Trojans. Rebounding, shot blocking, finishing. What do you have as a comparison for him?
Yeah, I mean, Big O, like you said, obviously, kind of burst onto the scene playing with those guys as a freshman, along with LaMelo Ball as a freshman. Then, when LaMelo left, he kind of went off the radar. Was still obviously a five-star, four-star prospect, but not the national. Chino Hills wasn't the national sensation that they were when LaMelo Ball was there and the Ball family left. But Big O is an excellent prospect. You mentioned the size, the athleticism, the rebounding ability, the motor. To me, he screams Tristan Thompson. I think Tristan Thompson, he has a lot of bounce. I think Big O, you could say maybe not as strong as Tristan Thompson was at Texas, but maybe a little more athletic. But Tristan Thompson also a guy that was athletic at Texas when he was a freshman. Neither guy I look at is supremely skilled, but a good finisher on the rim. And obviously Tristan Thompson has made a living as off of being an elite rebounder. And I think that's what Big O has to do if he wants to carve out a role as a starter in the NBA: is rebound, protect the rim, and be a lob threat. And those are all three things that Tristan Thompson does. Another guy you look at maybe Montrezl Harrell, but I think Big O has better physical traits than Harrell does, particularly at the same age. So I think his ceiling actually might be a little higher, although some may say Harrell's a better player than Tristan Thompson. So I would say Tristan Thompson.
Tristan Thompson is an interesting one. I think Okongwu probably has a little more offensive upside than Tristan Thompson, though I can certainly see him coming out and being a similar player. For me, I'm going to go with a young Antonio McDyess. I had to go back in my Wayback Machine to find a player here. And I know a lot of people who are younger audience who may remember Antonio McDyess, may remember him kind of limping around with the Knicks, or producing decent minutes for the Spurs and the Pistons later on in his career as more like a kind of a mid-range pick and pop shooter. If you watch Antonio McDyess playing for the Nuggets or playing for the Suns, this guy was a high flyer. This guy was aggressive. This guy was an excellent shot blocker. This guy ran the floor exceptionally well as a rim runner. And also had a really solid low post game. When I look at Okongwu, I see similar things. In some ways he is raw, but when you watch the tape, I'm very impressed by the foundation of the solid low post game that he's been able to establish at such a young age. I think that if he continues to grow on that, he'll be a threat in the post. He has very soft touch around the basket, can finish with both his left and right hand. Another thing that Antonio McDyess is really good at. And the other thing that I thought was very interesting, why I thought this was a very apt comparison, both guys only 6'9", but excellent shot blockers. Again, when McDyess was playing earlier in his career, he was a guy that could average 2-3 blocks a game. And Okongwu turned out to be one of the better shot blockers in college basketball during his freshman year. So another guy, 6'9", so not necessarily 7 foot or 6'11". They lack elite size, but they're both able to protect the rim at a very high level, and they're both very efficient. So McDyess, if you watch those highlights of him catching alleys from Jason Kidd and running the floor in Denver, I think you'll see a very, very similar player in Okongwu. So that's my comparison for Big O over at USC. Okay, here's another player I think I'm really fascinated by hearing what you have to talk about, because he's a kid that's going to get more recognition as we get closer to this draft, as point guards teams start looking at what point guards are going to go very high. Tyrese Haliburton from Iowa State. What do you think of him, and what's your comparison?
Tyrese Haliburton is an interesting prospect. Some people love him, some people aren't as high on him. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say I'm not a fan. I think maybe not the biggest Tyrese Haliburton fan. I think he's a top 10 pick. I think if you're drafting him, I think he's best suited on a team that has a lot of talent because I think, he's a great playmaker. And I think he needs, and I think he can help teams that are suited to win right away because he can always stay on the floor because of his defensive potential, his playmaking ability. And so for me, I think of a guy that also was a very, very solid role player on a lot of good teams. I think about KIRK HINRICH. I think KIRK HINRICH, another guy, offered you some spot up shooting, which Tyrese Haliburton obviously shot 40% at Iowa State. Not a great shot creator off the dribble. That's something you have to work on. And, KIRK HINRICH never really developed into an ISO shot creator. But very solid playmaker. I think Haliburton plays a little more flair than KIRK HINRICH does. But I think you talk about good size for the point guard position, good defensive player, and a good playmaker and a good spot up shooter. I think about KIRK HINRICH. Another guy, obviously, you think about Lonzo Ball, but I already said Lonzo Ball for LaMelo Ball, so I'm not going to double dip on that one.
Yeah, I kind of gave you a hard time on the Ball pick, so I'm glad you didn't go twice with Lonzo after what you did with LaMelo and Lonzo's comparison. For me here, I had to go. I'm going way back again here. I'm going with Derek Harper. Shout out New York Knicks fans. Shout out Dallas Maverick fans. I like both teams. I'm a huge Knicks fan, obviously, and I do for the Mavericks as well. Derek Harper is my comparison, and again, I think about probably a younger Derek Harper, a guy who was a borderline all-star. One thing, both guys have very good size at the point guard position. Haliburton, tall guard. Derek Harper, also very tall guard. Both guys very good shooters, especially in the catch and shoot situation. Haliburton is borderline lethal. He has a little bit of a unorthodox shot, but I think it's fine. I don't think it's a Lonzo Ball situation where he gets in the league and he won't be able to get it off. I think that he's shown an ability to get it off the dribble at times, and of course in spot up situations. He may have to quicken the release a little bit, but he's a very good shooter.
Deep range.
Yes, and he can shoot it from pretty much. And once soon as he crosses half court, he's pretty much a threat. Solid passer. Both guys again. I'm not looking at these guys to be 10 assist guys, but they find the open man. They make the right play. And the one thing I think that makes this comparison the one that narrowed it home for me was Haliburton is a really solid defender. Now Harper was all NBA defensive type of defender. I don't know if Haliburton's that good, but he really does stay in front of his man. He has very active hands. He's great in the passing lanes. And again, when it comes to man-to-man defense, he doesn't get beat very often. So I thought that Harper, while Harper may be a little bit more of a physically imposing guard, I think Haliburton has size, but doesn't necessarily use it to his best ability. I think that if I was a coach, I'd probably get him to try to understand that he's going to be much bigger than a lot of guards he's going up against. He's got to use that frame that he has. But overall, man, I think he's a solid player. I think Harper's a decent comparison. All right, our last guy we got here, another freshman. This time we're going to Auburn, Isaac Okoro. What do you got with him? Very jack of all trades type of player.
Yeah, Isaac Okoro really burst onto the scene this season. Was a top 50 recruit, but not someone people expected to be a one and done. He was a teammate of Sharif Cooper out at McEachern in Georgia, and they tandemed for one of the best high school teams in the country. Came to Auburn expecting to play with Sharif Cooper next season, but blew up as a one and done prospect. Excellent, your prototype 3-and-D. Last year, DeAndre Hunter, you'll have your Josh Jackson, Mikal Bridges, those types of guys that are always going to be compared to Kawhi or Jimmy Butler. I don't think any of those guys are Kawhi or Jimmy Butler, and that includes Isaac Okoro. But I think a solid comparison for Isaac Okoro for me is Metta World Peace, or previously known as Ron Artest. Especially Ron Artest when he was younger. Obviously, Okoro is an elite athlete. And I think he's much more explosive than Ron Artest was. But you want to talk about body types, Okoro also very, very strong. I think Artest also very strong for his age. Scoring potential, maybe not ever going to be a guy that's going to, be a 25, 30-point scorer. But shows flashes of being a guy that, okay, maybe if you work with this guy, he can be an 18 to 20-something point scorer. But also a wrecking ball on defense. A guy that plays with a lot of tenacity. both sides of the floor. I mean, he's just a guy you want on your team. And that's why I think Isaac Okoro and Ron Artest, particularly a younger Ron Artest in Chicago, coming out of St. John's, Indiana, is a comparison that I think Isaac Okoro should be excited about. You know, maybe not Kawhi Leonard, but you know, Ron Artest obviously was a very, very good player in his prime.
Yeah, I mean, people forget Ron Artest. You know, he eventually became like a 20-point scorer when he was playing for the Pacers and he played for the Rockets. Really good NBA player. You know, obviously, you know, a little bit of a wild child, but nonetheless, a very functional player. For me, this guy may have more of an offensive upside than I'm looking at with Okoro, but Okoro was so young, and the fact that he was able to burst onto the scene so impressively, it showed me how much he improved from his high school senior year to even just his freshman year. So I'm going to give this guy, you know, he's a multiple-time All-Star, but I'm going to go with Latrell Sprewell. Because when I watch these tapes of Okoro attacking these, you know, closeouts on his jump shot, which he has to work on, I don't know why, honestly, so many teams were just flying at him in terms of these spot-up threes, because he really didn't shoot them at a level that's going to be good enough in the NBA, so that's something he's going to have to work on. When I saw him get into the rim, I like, the only guy I could think of was like, who was going at the like rim that hard, or like flying down in fast breaks coast to coast, just tomahawking like that. I think of Latrell Sprewell playing for the Knicks. You know, same height. You know, they're both about 6'5", but they both played small forward because they were just really tough guys who could take the challenge of guarding sometimes guys who were taller. But they matched you know, what they lacked in height with just heart and toughness. And I think Okoro actually has probably a higher upside than Sprewell had as a defender. Sprewell was a good defender. I think Okoro can be a great defender. I think he's shown that capability already. But neither guy, you know, has a great handle. Nothing special. I would call their handles functional. That they can get wherever they need to get to on the court to get to the rim. And I think with the way they play, they're able to find their shots in just being aggressive and being athletic. And when I see Okoro, man, I mean, there are some plays where it just pops out, the athleticism that he displays. I think that once he kind of continues to learn the game, he's an interesting player. I think that, you know, he's raw, so in some sense it's kind of a risk because you're like, okay, you know, what do I do with this? But the one thing I like about Okoro is sometimes when we look at college players, we kind of gravitate to guys that were averaging 25 points a game and taking 20 shots a game, guys that were stars. But a lot of these guys are getting drafted. They're not going to come into the NBA and be star players. A lot of these guys, a lot of times, they're going to have to find a role. And what I loved about Okoro and why my second pick was Andre Iguodala, I think a guy who also compares very favorably to him, is Okoro was able to come in and play that kind of Iguodala role. You know, he could get the ball, he can push it on a fast break using that handle. He can find the open man. He's a pretty good passer. He plays defense. He can hit the open shot if it's given to him. And I think that what is exciting about Okoro is I can see him coming in, and even though I may think he's raw, a team may say, just go and guard the toughest guy on the other team. And when you get a chance, you know, try to hit the open shot or just run the floor and try to get, you know, garbage points. I feel like Okoro may be able to do that next year. Like, he's already shown an ability to do that in college. I don't see why he can't defend at a high level in the league. I don't see why he can't finish at a high level in the league. So, while you may be like, okay, what's his ceiling because of how raw he is, what he has is already functional enough to compete in the NBA. So I think that's what makes him an exciting prospect for me.
Yeah, I think with Okoro, I think you're looking at a guy that, I mean, it's always I think great when you have a prospect that didn't do a whole lot in college. It wasn't the man on his team, because when he goes to the NBA, he's not going to be the man more than likely. So maybe you don't draft that guy number 1, but if we're talking about a guy getting drafted between 4 and 10, or anywhere really after 4, chances are the guy's not going to be the best player on his team. But he's gonna be able to provide a role that is already something that he played in college, which, like you said, is guard one of the team's best wing players, and, you know, be able to provide some level of offense, but not on a secondary basis, but not as a primary option. And that's something that Isaac Okoro has done in college. He's going to have to do in the NBA from day one. But sometimes you have these guys that come in averaging 25 points in college, and now they have to adjust to playing off the ball. in the NBA or adjust to having to play within a team scheme. So that's where Okoro actually, I think, I would favor him over some of these other guys in his range.
Yeah, a guy with his natural talent that already has shown a willingness and an ability to excel as a secondary option, as a role player.
Going back to high school, even.
Yes,
again,
exactly.
You're playing with a guy like Sharif Cooper. He wasn't the man. He wasn't the man in high school. Wasn't the man at Auburn. And when he goes to the NBA, now sometimes you see that and you wonder, all right, can he ever be the man? Like, well, when will that?
You're not drafting him number 1. That's the thing.
Yeah,
is that you're not drafting number 1. You're not even drafting him number 5.
For the Atlanta Hawks, you have Trae Young.
Yeah, exactly.
You have Cam, you hope could be that guy. Like, there is a lot of these teams have guys. The Knicks have RJ Barrett.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you're trying to draft your number 2 or 3 guy to go with that guy, and I think Okoro is a perfect guy for that.
Absolutely. But what do you guys think of these draft comparisons? Do you like them? Do you disagree? Leave a comment on some of the players we talked about today. If you guys like our videos, of course, make sure you subscribe to our channel, New Generation Media. Check out our podcast, New Generation Sports Talk. You can find that on the New Generation Podcast Network. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and TuneIn. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. I'm EJ. For Kendall, take it easy, guys. Peace.